What's going on, y'all? Welcome back. Thanks for stopping through to kick it with me. We're going to have a conversation about Iyanla's episode from Saturday night, the Mitchell brothers. Um, and we're going to talk about a lot, okay? So just, bear with me. The video may run long, but we need to talk about what was going on in this episode. And um, I felt compelled to do this particular video because it resonated a lot with me, and also because I didn't start out intending to talk about each episode of Iyanla, hence why there's no video from me on Memphis. Um, so, but this right here, crack addiction and abandonment, yeah, we need to talk about this. That's not to lessen any of the events that took place in Memphis life, but I just didn't really feel compelled to do a video on it. So anyway, let's just get started, y'all. So it's 7 brothers and 1 sister. Mikhail, I think, or Michael is 30. Melvin is 28. Let me just grab this and turn around. Sorry, y'all. My setup is a little bit awkward, but Marcus is 32. Miguel is the brother that is deceased. He was killed in 2013. Michael Jr. is 36. He's the oldest of the brothers. Monte is incarcerated, doing 70 years for a string of armed robberies, and he went in at 16. Marvin is 29, and Marvin is the brother who actually solicited help from Iyanla. And then there's the 1 sister. So the episode starts out, and they just all are coming into the house of healing one by one. They go in, and Iyanla just starts, talking to them, really just getting started with them, basically. And she seats them in chronological order according to their age, and she was intending to just set up some structure like that, just to start out with, like as a foundation. So we learned that they haven't actually all been under one roof together since their brother died, which was at the time was 4 years ago. 2017 was when this was shot, so 4 years prior to the filming of the show. And some of them were born crack babies, basically, okay? And I think we find out that Michael, the oldest brother, is mentally challenged, and I really believe that that is some of the reason why he's mentally the way he is. He was probably most likely a crack baby, okay? And as the conversation begins, they start talking about the murder of Miguel, okay? And Marcus, the one that's 32, Marcus is the one that is really, really affected by Miguel's death, okay? And when the show opened up and Marcus was being introduced, Marcus said that it is Michael's fault that Miguel died, okay? And this, in this conversation, when they get started, is when it all starts to come out, okay? Because Marcus says that he feels like Marcus feels like it's Michael's fault because Michael can't really articulate exactly what happened. Excuse me, y'all. And he kind of feels sort of like, okay, if it wasn't for Michael, Miguel would still be alive. And Michael was trying to tell everybody what happened, and but if y'all notice, when Michael was telling the story, the look on on Marcus's face was like, oh my God. Like, he just looked like he was just totally disgusted with Michael. And, you know, it just, if it felt to me like Marcus is just stuck. You know, there's 5 stages of grief, right? And it feels like Marcus is stuck in the anger stage of grief, specifically as it pertains to his brother's death. I mean, of course, we see he's angry anyway, just in general, but it just feels like he hasn't properly grieved his brother's death, and he's looking to place blame, and he's blaming it on Michael. So apparently Miguel's death struck everyone so harshly because he was sort of kind of bringing the family back together. So and the one brother said it was working, but then he got killed and it just all fell apart. So it also comes out in the conversation that not Michael, I'm sorry y'all, I'm getting these names all mixed up, but it comes out in the conversation that Marcus feels as though the onus was on him to protect all his brothers. He, you know, has no regard for his life because he felt like it was up to him to protect his brothers, and because he didn't do that, he's blaming himself. Okay. It's just it's so much. There's so much confusion going on just in general about this entire situation. But then there's also the added confusion of the circumstances surrounding Miguel's death, because, you know, one brother says one thing, the other brother says something else, the other brother says something else, and there's so many of them that it's just all this extra confusion swirling around, just pain on top of pain on top of pain, and nobody has any answers. Okay, so that's that. And in that conversation, Iyanla was like, you know, trying to get to the root of the anger, and Marcus says, you know, because he's blaming Michael, and they're like, all the brothers basically was like, well, you know, why are you blaming him? You know, because either way, like, you and your brother, y'all went down there trying to handle this robbery or whatever for your brother, because you know he can't really handle himself, and somebody got killed, you know, and whether it was going to be Miguel that got killed or whoever, somebody was going to die, and it just wasn't who you were thinking. Iyanla pointed out to him, because Marcus was like, I went down there to handle it, and in my mind somebody was going to die, and Iyanla had to point out to him, like, yeah, somebody did die, and it just wasn't who you thought it would be. So it just really disturbed me, because it's like, this happens so often, like, this happens so much, and it just gets dismissed and swept under the rug. And I appreciate the fact that Iyanla said, you know, I'm here for the black family, and she really is. I really believe Iyanla is truly genuine in her mission, so which is why I follow Iyanla and I watch her show. Anyway, moving on to the conversation with Iyanla and Marvin. Okay, so again, Marvin was the one who reached out to the show, and when they sat down, Iyanla was like, if there's any one thing that you need to be fixed, what is it? And he said, forgiveness. Okay, and Iyanla was like, well, you can't forgive something if you don't know what the thing is. So they start talking, and it comes out that Melvin and Marvin were in the same foster home. Marcus was there too. Like, it was Marvin there with a few of his other brothers. Okay, and as time went on, Marcus and the other brothers decided to run away from the foster home, and they left Marvin there because we found out later when they were talking to Marcus. Marcus felt like Marvin would be safe in the foster home, so he left. Anyway, as time went on, another foster child that had aged out of the foster care system ended up coming back into the home, and Marvin gravitated towards this person because the 19-year-old was basically just being real nice, giving him things, showing him attention and everything. And Marvin was like, okay, cool, we can do this because my brothers, they left me, so I got a new brother. But what ended up happening was this 19-year-old molested him. Okay, and this was another really, really hard part to watch, is that when Marvin was explaining to Iyanla what happened to him about being molested, he just was rolling it off, just talking about it, as if it was just nothing. And Iyanla had to stop him and be like, hold on, wait, what happened? Slow down. Tell me again what happened. And Marvin went back through it, and Iyanla just had him to sit there for a second in that, and she ended up asking him, because Marvin said he didn't stop it, and Iyanla was like, well, why didn't you? And Marvin was just like, because I knew eventually I was going to have to pay for this person being so nice to me. And I know how that feels, when it's just almost like this shit is too right. This shit is too right. It's gotta be wrong. And that's kind of in a sense what happened with Marvin, and he said he didn't stop it because basically he was paying his dues for this 19-year-old being so nice to him. And he clearly he was hurt by it, but the way he was just talking about it as if it was nothing, it just was like, well, damn, like, hold on, how do you go, what frame of mind are you in to just be able to skate over something like that, and it's like you have to be in a certain space, like in this horrible space that you don't even know. Well, it's horrible, but you suppressed it for so long, and you've just kind of dealt with it in your own way for so long that you just talk about it like, oh yeah, well, yeah, it happened. And and we find out that he ended up dealing with it. He deals with his pain by traveling around, from wherever to wherever, dealing with these different guys, having sex with different guys. He also said he sat alone in the dark a lot. And when he was molested, he was on medication for depression. So okay, your mother left you, your father ended up letting you be a ward of the state, you get into this foster home, having to totally readjust, and you're also clinically depressed, so you're on these pharmaceuticals that's making you sleep heavy, and then you have somebody who should know better that is taking advantage of you like that. So wow, I just I don't know, it's just hard. And she sat with him, rocked him like a baby, because she like, I you don't have to feel like you're alone. Like, I'm here to be present with you in your pain. And the way she embraced him and he kind of just melted into her, and how he exhaled, and it was audible, you could hear it on the show as you're watching it, like when she held him and he closed his eyes and he exhaled, it was almost like he had been waiting his entire life to just release that burden, and it was just a very moving moment in the show. And I'm sorry, y'all, I'm still groggy from taking a whole bunch of medicine over the weekend. I had a sore throat, so forgive me. Just bear with me, and leave your comments below if I'm missing anything or anything like that. So anyway, they all ended up outside, and Iyanla tasked them with basically a teamwork exercise. She needs them to build this shelter, and they're all in. Like the way they just kind of like the look on their faces, and it looked like they're ready to receive. It looked like to me they were ready to receive, unlike Kamaya, okay? And we saw how that was. But when she tasked them with this, they looked like they were ready to do it, and they were willing to do the work, okay? So they start out, and then Marvin and Melvin kind of get into it, because Melvin had an issue with the way Marvin was doing something or not doing something, and then Marvin just drops the wood and walks off. Iyanla goes and talks to him, and she was like, okay, do you know the difference between popping off and just taking instruction? And Marvin was like, first he was like, yeah, and then he was like, no, because Iyanla was like, okay, well, what is it? And then he was like, well, no, I don't know, or whatever. But Iyanla talked him through that, you know what I'm saying? She had him to just stop and talk him through that, and just basically just give him what he needed in that moment to recognize what was going on, and to discover that he had power over that situation. Like, he didn't have to give his power away by becoming angry and getting defeated, but that he could take his power back by acknowledging his wrong and saying, okay, I just was having a moment, I'm back, what do you need me to do? And he did it. That's what I'm saying. Like, these men are open and they're ready to receive it. And Marvin said it at the introduction. He was like, I'm ready for it, I need it. And that just was that just made me be like, see, the way we get thrown away so often, people always assume that we can't do it and we're not worthy of any help, we're not worthy of any attention, we're just always angry, this, that, and the other, and it's for no reason. But this is why I like following and watching Iyanla, because she is like, she puts that work in, and she doesn't just dismiss and throw us away. So anyway, Marvin goes back, and he was like, I had a moment, what do you need me to do? And they told him, and then they ended up building the shelter. They built it, and they looked happy. Like, when they, even under all of, like, all of this stuff is going on and going wrong and chaotic in their lives, and they are hurt and they're angry and enraged and all of this, and this, but they still, when they did this activity together, and they this little shelter that they built, it wasn't much, but they did it together, and they looked like they were happy that they did it together. And Iyanla was like, see, y'all did it with very little instruction, and she brought it to their attention, like, y'all can do this. with the tools that you have, and the fact that you were you had the ingenuity to do this with very little instruction. And it was kind of like a metaphor for their lives. Like, they did the best that they could with what they had. And I think she was really trying to drive the point home that, like, you're not supposed to have everything figured out. And we'll see this with her individual conversation with Marcus, because she sits down one-on-one with Marcus, and she asks him, like, off top, where did you learn your coping skills? And he's like, from the street. And he took those coping skills and just kind of ran with them. And because his father wasn't there, Michael Sr. wasn't there, he felt like the onus was on him to protect his brothers, because Michael has a mental incapacity and all his brothers were younger than him. So the other brothers were younger than him. So he felt like, this is me. I have to do this. And at 7 years old, he said that he felt like this is what he had to do. Can you imagine that at 7, you're a baby at 7, but to feel like you have to be the protector of your kin at 7 years old? People don't know. People don't understand. But they quick to judge, though. But I mean, it just, I see this so often. I have seen it a lot. But anyway, y'all, he feels guilty about running away from the foster home, because, like I said earlier, he ran because he felt like Marvin would be okay, because Marvin had a way of having people cater to him. So he felt like he had he just felt like it would be better if he just went on about his business, because I mean, it just was kind of like a feeling of worthlessness that he just grew up with. So he ran from the foster home, but he, as a grown man with 4 boys of his own, he felt guilty for leaving his brothers, or leaving his brother at the foster home. And Iyanla said, like, it just seems to me like after he let all of this out about how he felt guilty and how he felt like he failed his brothers, Iyanla was like, I just feel like you haven't been nurtured. And the same thing she did with Marvin, she did with Marcus. She let him lay his head in her lap and just cry. And that's another something in our communities. Like, we've raised our boys to be so tough, and raise our boys to be not, and sometimes it just happens because of circumstance, such as Marcus. Like, they don't have nobody raising them, so they got the streets raising them. And when the world give you its ass to kiss, you don't have no emotion, you don't have no feelings no more. You know what I'm saying? Because you've gone through those phases of having feelings and having been shit on. You know what I mean? You ain't got no parents. You in foster care. The system is failing you, so it's just like, well, fuck it. Why have feelings? So it was good to see that Iyanla just let him cry it out, okay? And she said he makes things happen by force, and that's just the way of the streets. And that's what he knows. But Iyanla made a great point in the car battery situation. When she also said, power equals a permanent change, whereas force equals a temporary change. And the power is like in the empowerment of him, and like recognizing that rage and being able to let it go. Excuse me. And the force the force is that brute force that she brought up, that she and Marcus was talking about. That brute force is what he knows so well and what he has implemented his entire life. But she made it a point to show him, like, that force equals a temporary change, but this power that I'm trying to give you, or I'm trying for you to even just recognize that you have within yourself, that is a permanent change. And he was receptive, and the way she was like, do you need a hug? And they embraced like he needed that. So anyway, she moves on and she has a one-on-one conversation with Michael Sr. And basically, Michael Sr. started out trying to play the victim. Like, my wife left me with the kids, and I don't know why. But he knew why, and of course Iyanla ain't gonna let him slide with that bullshit. Iyanla's like, basically, look, you need to call it what it is. You know what I'm saying? Shit stinks, okay? And this right here is some shit, and you need to call this shit that you created some shit, basically. So it turns out that his wife left him because he was fucking around on her, doing drugs, and she too was doing drugs. So Iyanla made the point of, well, maybe she left because she was on drugs and she felt like the children would be better with their father than with me as the mother on drugs. So she left. He still fucks it up somehow and ends up with the kids being taken by the state. And as the conversation continues, the father's like, yeah, had I known what was happening to them, basically, if I had known what was happening to them in foster care, I would have done XYZ. And Iyanla was like, what? What do you mean? You wasn't gonna do shit? Like, you couldn't even feed or clothe them without the state's help. So what was you gonna do? And he was like, they never told me. And immediately before Iyanla even said it, I was like, okay, they didn't tell you because they know you can't do shit. So why didn't they? Iyanla's like, why didn't they have the trust? Why didn't they trust you enough to tell you what was going on? And it's because they knew he couldn't do shit, basically. Okay, so that was that. That was the show, basically. We're gonna on the part 2, we're gonna get introduced to the mother. You can look at the mother and tell she smoked crack all her life. The father, not so much, but the mother, you can look at her and tell that she smoked crack. And hopefully we'll get some more insight into some more of the reasons why things went the way they did for the Mitchell brothers. And one last thing I want to just point out is that Iyanla said, this is the pure embodiment of a pathology. Okay, like, that shit runs in our veins. Like, trauma runs in our veins as Black people. Okay, and it wasn't until recently that I heard people say that, but it didn't really it wasn't put into perspective until I came across this book. And I'm gonna leave y'all with this. Y'all can take it or leave it, but it's the book called My Grandmother's Hands. Okay, and it's by Resmaa Menakem. Okay, I might be mispronouncing his name, but look him up. He got all types of credentials with him, but He wrote this book, and again, it's called My Grandmother's Hands: Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies. And you know, I'm still working on it. I haven't gotten through the entire book yet. I'm listening to it on Audible. But if y'all want some more perspective on that cycle and that pathology, check out that book. Okay. And yeah, y'all, that's it. I don't know, y'all. We'll see what happens on part 2, and more than likely I will come back with a part 2 conversation. So y'all have a good night. Whenever y'all are watching, you know, whatever time of day it is, just take it easy, and I'll see y'all in the next video. All right.